Then we've got, okay, I just wanted to do this because George Lucas, he's such a... Every time I picture George Lucas, I see him in a Chewbacca outfit driving around in a golf cart. That's what I always see him. I just think the guy's a hilarious, aged adult child. It's ridiculous, but... He's got some worlds that he comes up with. So apparently, according to Mark Hamill, he first heard about a proposed sequel trilogy in 1972. George Lucas actually told him he planned to make 12 movies in this series of the Star Wars universe. And episode 9 was supposed to come out around 2011 when Hamill would be the right age. And Lucas explicitly said that the original saga was about the father, the children, and the grandchildren. So it was that progression of how it worked out, which is kind of... I like that. It's simple, it's a clear structure, it makes sense, and you can have a thematic through line all the way through, 9 movies, where you have the anchor of the family drama with all this space stuff happening around it. I think that sounds better. But there's a Jedi named Kira, described as a loner, hothead, gear-headed badass. And then there was another one. These are supposed to be the grandchildren of Anakin or whatever. There's another one, Sam, who mostly appears depicted with a blaster, which suggested that he didn't have force powers. But somebody, who was this who said this? I didn't put who actually made the quote, but this person had said that there was a late 2012 idea of Luke Skywalker haunted by the betrayal of one of his students who was in self-imposed exile and spiritually in a dark place. So it preceded Rian Johnson's involvement in it and J.J. Abrams. So this likely was a Lucas idea. And I saw some art. Actually, the art looked pretty good. Of Luke being this figure. He's described as a Colonel Kurtz type figure. And anybody, please read books. Everybody, read books, please. I know it's much easier to just sit down and let something wash over you. But just even if you have to go to the audiobook, just read some books. So this is Heart of Darkness. Colonel Kurtz type character where it's somebody who initially had the right intentions but goes off and kind of loses their mind a little bit, or they just become so entrenched in these ideas, philosophical ideas, that they just kind of cut out the rest of the world, and somebody has to go after them to cut through all the brush and get to the real human being or slay them. And that's a fine idea. I mean, obviously it's Luke Skywalker, and as Mark Hamill described him, Luke Skywalker is supposed to be one of the most optimistic people on the planet, or on the planet, in the universe, in the galaxy at least. We don't know what the rest of the galaxies have to say about it. Of course, Star Wars, again, is supposed to be a soap opera, so it's not meant to have these kind of broader ideas, but still. So as Mark Hamill talked about, Luke Skywalker is supposed to be this really optimistic figure, and that's something that's kind of stripped away in the sequels. Here, it's talking about Luke Skywalker, he's betrayed by one of his students, as opposed to he betrays one of his students. So I hated that about The Last Jedi too. It's okay if it's perfectly set up. If you want to do such a character change that your character who used to be optimistic went through all these trials to gain this wisdom, to see what it's like to sacrifice yourself to save the galaxy, all that sort of stuff, and was willing to take the beating he took just to try to get his father to turn back to the right side, the light side, and all of his friends threatened and the people dead and all that stuff. He had to see Ben killed. To go from that point all the way to just be a complete dick who's trying to kill a kid because he thinks maybe, it's like... I really don't like that turn. It would have been much better if Ben Solo just turned out to betray him, and then Ben Solo was fighting with that, for the rest of his life, and Luke was fighting with that because he feels like he failed Ben and he failed the rest of his friends and family and all that. It could have been done so much better. But anyway, so this apparently originated with George Lucas, this general idea. However, George Lucas wanted to dive into really like the biology the biology of how the Force works, so the microbiotic world, the science of the midi-chlorians. Oh my gosh, that would have been something. And it was supposed to focus on the wills, which is like another step removed from the midi-chlorians. It's apparently this microscopic ancient life form that fed on the Force, and the midi-chlorians within the Force-sensitive beings communicate directly with the wills and allow them to be super powerful in the galaxy or whatever. So obviously this wasn't fleshed out, but it's kind of a weird thing to have the midi-chlorians plus the Wills, and they're both microscopic things interacting with each other, where they seem redundant, is the point. But George Lucas, he was big on this, like, from the very, very beginning. It was apparently part of, before episode 4, and as inspiration for episode 4, he talked about the Wills and the journal of the Wills, and that the story of Luke Skywalker was actually, had a subtitle, From the Adventures of Luke Skywalker as taken from the journal of the Wills. And some entity of the Wills was supposed to be what was telling the original story of Star Wars. Again, if you've seen any of my other stuff, George Lucas has big ideas about a world. He puts the world first, character second. So to that extent, this is an interesting take on it, but there's something really goofy about about the microbiotics. And even beyond just the goofiness, it's the completely attacking the mystery of your world and just trying to undermine the mystery that made it so interesting in the first place. And that's kind of a thing that a lot of writers do, is that they see like, oh, people really like this aspect of my story, so let me over-explain it. Let me explain it more and explicate it to a degree that it's no longer interesting. You know, there's nothing else to it, so it's like, all right, well, moving on. So I don't know about that. I have a quote here. What was it? We want to make something for the fans. People don't actually realize it's actually a soap opera and it's all about family problems. It's not about spaceships. So that's something George Lucas says. Absolutely, that is an excellent tack to take on it. That it's fundamentally about the core of those characters and the family drama that's going on there, and that all the other space stuff is just window dressing so that you can get that across. But those are two other takes on episode 9 and the sequels in general. And I don't know, I think if I had a do-over, I think I would have rather just seen what George Lucas did. If at all we could get somebody else to write and somebody else to direct. If we could do that and just see what George Lucas, even if he wants to do all this dumb Wills and midi-chlorian stuff, I think I would have rather seen that over Colin Trevorrow's version, and especially over J.J. Abrams' version. But whatever the case, I really think they started off on the completely wrong foot with episode 7. And it's funny because there's this quote from Walt Disney, which is like a punchline now. He explicitly said, I don't make movies to make money. I make money to make movies. That's what Disney said. That's why everything Disney did early on was so magical and did so much and got them to the footing that they're in, that Disney's in. And now it's completely the opposite. Now they're making movies to make money instead of for the joy of making great movies. And no amount of money that you can throw at something, no amount of pent-up interest in a thing is going to make up for making a terrible movie. It's just not going to happen. You make bad characters, they are not going to have the legs. You know, that's why Star Wars, it started out with Star Wars the movie. It's a phenomenon. Now we make the toys instead of, okay, let's figure out what toys we want to make. Now let's plug in the characters and go on from there. It's just, those are some other takes on episode 9. Anyway, if you want my opinion, get Denis Villeneuve to do Star Wars. Let him start off a trilogy and then let other people build off of that. That would be a great way to get Star Wars back on the right foot and get something interesting plugged into the world again. So I hope all is well. So I'm not sure what I've got coming up, but please, there are a lot of videos I made that are horribly made, but I love them to death. And I'd really appreciate if you watched them. Those are in the greatest hits playlist or whatever. And the rewrites, if you like those, thank you very much for watching those. And otherwise, we'll see you on the next one. All right, bye.